Single dad finds injured F-16 pilot in a storm, unaware. She'd change his life forever. The rain hit like bullets against Cole Bennett's windshield as he drove through the back roads of rural Montana. His 8-year-old daughter Lily asleep in the back seat. The storm had come out of nowhere. Violent, merciless, the kind that made you question every decision that led you onto the road at midnight. But Cole had no choice. The hospital in Billings was 2 hours away, and Lily's inhaler had run out. One more asthma attack without it, and he'd lose the only thing in this world that still made him want to wake up in the morning. His knuckles were white on the steering wheel. 3 years since Emma died. 3 years of doing this alone. The cooking, the laundry, the school pickups, the nightmares, the bills he couldn't pay. He was a ghost in his own life, moving through the motions because stopping meant drowning. Then he saw it. A shape in the darkness ahead, just off the shoulder of the road. At first he thought it was a deer, but as his headlights caught it, Cole's heart stopped. A person, collapsed. Face down in the mud, he slammed on the brakes, the truck skidding to a stop. For a moment he just sat there, hands trembling. Every instinct screamed at him to keep driving. Lily needed her medicine. They were already late. But the image of that body, motionless in the storm, burned into his mind. "Stay in the truck, baby," he whispered, though Lily was still asleep. Cole stepped out into the downpour. The cold hit him immediately, soaking through his flannel shirt in seconds. He ran toward the figure, his boots splashing through puddles, and dropped to his knees beside them. It was a woman. Young, maybe early 30s, and she was wearing a flight suit, torn, burned in places, covered in mud and blood. Her face was pale, lips blue, but she was breathing. Barely. Hey, can you hear me?" Cole pressed 2 fingers to her neck. Weak pulse. He scanned the darkness around them, looking for wreckage, for fire, for anything that would explain how an Air Force pilot ended up in the middle of nowhere. Nothing. Just trees. Rain and darkness. He couldn't leave her. Not like this. With a grunt, Cole lifted her into his arms. She was light, too light, and limp as a rag doll. He carried her back to the truck, laid her across the back seat beside Lily, and grabbed the emergency blanket from the glove box. His hands worked on autopilot, checking for injuries, wrapping her in the blanket, tilting her head to keep her airway clear. Lily stirred, her eyes fluttering open. "Daddy?" "It's okay, sweetheart. Go back to sleep. Who's that?" Cole met his daughter's eyes in the rearview mirror. He didn't have an answer. "Someone who needs help," he said quietly. He put the truck in gear and pressed the gas, the hospital now urgent for 2 reasons instead of 1. As he drove, the woman in the backseat began to murmur. Fragmented words, delirious. "Mayday. Engine failure. 20 miles south." Cole's grip tightened on the wheel. Whatever had happened to her, it was bad. And something told him, some deep, unshakable instinct, that finding her tonight wasn't random. It was the beginning of something that would change everything. The emergency room was chaos. Cole carried the pilot through the sliding doors, shouting for help, and within seconds she was surrounded by nurses and doctors. They whisked her away on a gurney, barking medical terms he didn't understand, and suddenly Cole was standing alone in the fluorescent glare of the waiting room, soaking wet and shaking. Lily tugged on his sleeve. "Is she going to be okay?" "I don't know, baby." A nurse brought Lily's inhaler and Cole watched his daughter take 2 puffs, her small chest rising and falling more easily. That was all that mattered. She was safe. But his eyes kept drifting to the double doors where they'd taken the woman. An hour passed, then 2. Finally, a doctor emerged, a tired-looking man in his 50s with kind eyes. "You're the one who brought her in." Cole nodded. "You saved her life." Another 20 minutes in that storm, and she wouldn't have made it. The doctor glanced at his clipboard. "She's stable now. Hypothermia, broken ribs, lacerations, and a concussion. But she'll recover." "What happened to her?" The doctor hesitated. "That's what we're trying to figure out. Her dog tags say Captain Grace Dalton, United States Air Force. We've contacted Malmstrom Air Force Base. They're sending someone." Grace. Her name was Grace. Cole sat back down, relief washing over him. She was alive. That was enough. But 20 minutes later, when two Air Force officers in dress uniforms walked through the doors, their expressions grim, Cole realized this was bigger than he'd thought. One of them, a stern woman with silver hair, approached the doctor. "Where is she?" "Room 4. "But she's not conscious yet." The woman's jaw tightened. She turned to her companion, a younger man with sharp eyes. "Secure the area. No one talks to her without clearance." Cole stood up. "Excuse me. I'm the one who found her." The silver-haired officer turned to him, her gaze cold and assessing. "Mr. Bennett." "Cole Bennett." "Mr. Bennett, Captain Dalton's aircraft went down during a training exercise. What you did tonight is commendable, but this is now a military matter." "What does that mean?" "It means we'll take it from here." Something in her tone set Cole's teeth on edge. He'd spent enough time around people in power to recognize when they were hiding something. She was 20 miles from any base, in the middle of nowhere. What was she doing out there? The officer's expression didn't change. "That's classified." "Classified?" "Yes." Cole wanted to argue, but Lily was tugging on his hand, exhausted and scared. He couldn't drag her into whatever this was. So he nodded, took his daughter, and walked out into the night. But as he drove home, something gnawed at him. The way those officers had looked at each other. The word classified. The fact that Grace's plane had gone down in the middle of a storm, miles from where it should have been. Something wasn't right. 3 days later, Cole was fixing the fence on his small ranch when a car pulled up the long dirt driveway. A black sedan, government plates. His stomach tightened. The door opened, and Grace Dalton stepped out. She looked different than she had. In the storm, cleaned up, hair pulled back, wearing civilian clothes. But her face was still bruised, and she moved carefully like every step hurt. Cole set down his hammer and walked over. "You're up," Grace nodded. "Thanks to you." They stood there for a moment, the wind rustling through the Montana grasslands. Lily peeked out from the porch, curious. "I came to thank you in person," Grace said. "What you did. Most people would have kept driving. Most people aren't decent." A faint smile touched her lips. "No, they're not." She glanced at the house, the fence, the tire swing hanging from the oak tree. "You live here alone, you and your daughter?" "Yeah," Grace's expression softened. "I won't take much of your time. I just needed you to know. What you did mattered." She turned to leave, but Cole's voice stopped her. "What really happened out there?" Grace froze. When she looked back, her eyes were guarded. "I told you, training exercise." "That's what the Air Force said, but I don't think you believe it either." For a long moment, they just stared at each other. Then Grace sighed, glancing around to make sure they were alone. "If I tell you," she said quietly, "you can't repeat it. Not to anyone." Cole nodded. Grace stepped closer, her voice dropping to barely a whisper. "My plane didn't malfunction. Someone shot me down." Cole's world tilted. "What?" Grace's eyes were steady, but there was fear beneath the surface, real raw fear. "I can't prove it yet, but I know what I saw. There was another aircraft. It locked onto me. I tried to evade, but they hit my engine. I ejected, and then you ended up in the middle of nowhere." "Yeah," Cole ran a hand through his hair, his mind racing. "Why would someone shoot down an Air Force pilot? And why aren't you telling your superiors?" Grace's jaw tightened. "Because I don't know who I can trust. Whoever did this, they knew my flight path. They knew when I'd be alone. That means someone on the inside gave them the information. So you came here. I came to thank the man who saved my life. And maybe," she hesitated, "maybe because I needed to see that there are still people in this world who do the right thing without asking questions." Cole looked at her, really looked at her. Beneath the bruises and the exhaustion, there was strength. The kind of strength that only comes from surviving something that should have killed you. "You can't stay on the run forever," he said. "I know. And you can't do this alone." Grace laughed, but it was hollow. "I'm used to being alone." Cole understood that. He'd been alone for 3 years, ever since Emma's car slid off an icy road and took half his heart with it. He'd learned to survive it, to function, but he'd never stopped feeling like he was drowning. "Look," he said carefully, "I don't know anything about military conspiracies or cover-ups, but I know what it's like to feel like the world is against you, and I know you shouldn't have to face that by yourself." Grace studied him, something shifting in her expression. "You don't even know me. I know you're a fighter pilot who survived a crash and walked 20 miles in a storm with broken ribs. That's enough." For the first time, Grace's guard dropped. "Just a little. Why are you doing this?" "Because someone has to." Lily appeared on the porch, her small voice carrying across the yard. "Daddy, is she staying for dinner?" Cole looked at Grace. "Are you?" Grace glanced between him and Lily, and for a moment Cole saw the walls crumble. She was exhausted, scared, and so alone. "Yeah," she said quietly. "I'd like that." That night, they sat around Cole's small kitchen table. Him, Lily, and Grace. It was the first time in 3 years that the house didn't feel empty. Grace told Lily stories about flying, about soaring through clouds and seeing the world from above. Lily's eyes lit up, her laughter filling the room, and Cole realized he'd almost forgotten what that sound was like. After dinner, when Lily was asleep, Cole and Grace sat on the porch. The Montana sky stretched out above them, endless and full of stars. "I can't stay," Grace said. "It's not safe." "For you or for her, where will you go?" "I don't know yet. But I have to figure out who did this." "And why?" Cole nodded slowly. "Then let me help." Grace turned to him, surprised. "Cole, you have a daughter, a life. You can't get involved in this. I'm already involved. The moment I pulled you out of that storm." They sat in silence, the weight of the decision hanging between them. Finally, Grace spoke, her voice barely above a whisper. "I haven't felt safe in a long time. But tonight, I did." Cole met her eyes and something unspoken passed between them. Understanding, trust, and maybe, just maybe, the beginning of something neither of them expected. "Then stay," he said, "just for tonight. And tomorrow, we'll figure out the rest." Grace nodded, and for the first time since the crash, she let herself breathe. Neither of them knew it yet, but this was the moment everything changed. The moment two broken people found each other in the darkness and decided they were stronger together than apart. And somewhere, in the shadows, the people who shot Grace down were watching, waiting, planning their next move. Grace stayed for 1 night, then 2, then a week. At first it was practical. She needed time to heal, to plan her next move without the Air Force breathing down her neck. But as the days passed, something shifted. She started helping Lily with her homework. She fixed the broken porch step Cole had been meaning to get to for months. She laughed at his terrible jokes over breakfast. And Cole started to feel like maybe, just maybe, he wasn't drowning anymore. But peace never lasts. It was a Thursday afternoon when the black SUV rolled up the driveway. Cole was out back chopping wood, Grace was inside with Lily, and neither of them saw it coming until it was too late. 3 men stepped out. Suits, sunglasses, the kind of men who didn't ask permission. Cole dropped the axe and walked around the side of the house. "Can I help you?" The lead man, tall, broad-shouldered, with a scar running down his jawline, smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. "Cole Bennett." "That's me. We're looking for someone. Captain Grace Dalton. We have reason to believe she's been here." Cole's blood ran cold. "I don't know what you're talking about." The man's smile widened. "Mr. Bennett, lying to federal agents is a crime. Federal agents carry badges. You guys just look like thugs in expensive suits." The man's expression darkened. He took a step forward, and instinctively Cole's body tensed. He'd never been a fighter, but he'd protect his home. "His daughter. Last chance," the man said. "Tell us where she is and we'll walk away." "No one gets hurt." Cole's jaw tightened. "Get off my property." The man nodded to his companions, and they started toward the house. That's when Grace stepped onto the porch, a shotgun in her hands. "That's far enough." The men froze. Grace's voice was calm, controlled, but Cole could see the fire in her eyes. "I don't know who sent you, but you picked the wrong house." The lead man raised his hands slowly, mockingly. "Captain Dalton, we just want to talk." "Talk? You shot me out of the sky and left me for dead." "That's not talking. You don't understand what you've stumbled into." "Then explain it." The man glanced at his companions, and for a moment, Cole thought they might actually leave. But then the man's hand moved toward his jacket, and everything happened at once. Grace fired a warning shot into the ground. "Don't." The man froze, hand still hovering near his weapon. "You're making a mistake." "No, you are." Cole moved to stand beside Grace, his heart hammering in his chest. He had no weapon, no training, but he wasn't going to let her face this alone. "Leave," Cole said, his voice steady. "And don't come back." The standoff lasted an eternity. Then slowly, the men backed toward their SUV. The lead man pointed at Grace, his expression cold. "This isn't over, I know." They drove away, dust kicking up behind them. And Cole let out a breath he didn't know he'd been holding. Grace lowered the shotgun, her hands shaking. "I'm sorry. I shouldn't have—" "Don't." Cole turned to her. "You have nothing to apologize for. They'll come back. And next time they won't just talk." Cole knew she was right. But as he looked at her, this woman who'd crashed into his life and somehow made him feel alive again, he also knew he wasn't letting her go. "Then we leave. Tonight. All of us." Grace shook her head. "Cole, you can't uproot your life because of me. This stopped being just about you the moment they showed up at my door threatening my family. I'm not your family." Cole stepped closer, his voice firm. "You are now." Grace stared at him, something breaking in her expression. And in that moment, Cole realized the truth. He'd spent 3 years surviving, not living. And Grace, she'd spent her whole life fighting, never letting anyone close enough to hurt her. But somehow, they'd found each other. And neither of them wanted to let go. "Okay," Grace whispered. "We leave tonight." Inside, Lily was packing her stuffed animals into a backpack, her face pale but determined. "Are we going on an adventure, Daddy?" Cole knelt beside her, his heart aching. "Yeah, baby." "An adventure? Is Grace coming?" Cole glanced at Grace, who stood in the doorway, watching them. "Yeah, she's coming." Lily smiled, and it was the kind of smile that made everything worth it. As the sun set over the Montana plains, the three of them loaded into Cole's truck and drove into the night. They didn't know where they were going, didn't know how they'd survive, but they knew one thing: they were together, and that was enough. They drove for 3 days, moving from town to town, staying in cheap motels and paying cash for everything. Grace used her military contacts, the ones she trusted, to dig into what had really happened the night she was shot down. The truth, when it finally came, was worse than they'd imagined. It wasn't just a rogue attack. It was a cover-up. A black ops program gone wrong, illegal weapons testing over American soil. And Grace had seen something she wasn't supposed to, so they'd tried to erase her. But Grace wasn't the erasing type. With Cole's help, she gathered evidence: flight logs, encrypted communications, testimony from other pilots who'd seen strange aircraft. It took weeks, but slowly the pieces came together. And when they had enough, Grace made the call, not to the Air Force, not to the government officials who'd proven they couldn't be trusted. She called the press. Within days, the story broke. Headlines screamed about military corruption, illegal operations, and the pilot who'd survived to expose it all. The men who'd come to Cole's ranch were arrested. The officers who'd covered it up were court-martialed. And Grace became a hero all over again. But she didn't feel like one. She felt tired and lost, and unsure of what came next. It was Cole who found her on the porch of the cabin they'd been hiding in, staring out at the mountains. "You okay?" Grace shrugged. "I don't know what I am." Cole sat beside her. "You're someone who did the right thing. Even when it was hard. I couldn't have done it without you." "Yeah, you could have. But I'm glad you didn't have to." Grace looked at him, and for the first time in her life, she let herself be vulnerable. "I don't know how to do this. The normal life thing. The staying in one place thing. Neither do I. I've been faking it for 3 years. Then maybe we figure it out together." Cole smiled. "Yeah, maybe we do." 6 months later, Grace officially retired from the Air Force. She bought a small ranch 2 miles from Cole's, close enough to feel like family, far enough to keep their independence. But most nights, she was at Cole's place anyway, helping with dinner, reading to Lily, sitting on the porch with Cole, watching the stars. Lily loved her, called her Aunt Grace at first, then just Grace, and sometimes when she was half asleep, Mama. Neither Cole nor Grace corrected her, because somewhere along the way, between the storm and the gunfight and the long nights on the run, they'd become a family. Not in the traditional way. Not with rings or vows or official paperwork, but in the way that mattered. One evening, as the three of them sat around the fire pit in Cole's backyard, Lily looked up at Grace with wide, curious eyes. "Grace, are you going to stay forever?" Grace glanced at Cole, who was watching her with that quiet, steady gaze that had come to mean home. "Yeah, kiddo," Grace said softly. "I think I am." Lily grinned and went back to roasting her marshmallow, and Cole reached over, taking Grace's hand. They didn't need to say anything. The touch was enough. Sometimes the storms that nearly destroy us bring exactly what we need. Sometimes the people we save end up saving us right back. And sometimes, in the wreckage of loss and fear and broken lives, we find something stronger than we ever thought possible. Cole had pulled Grace from the darkness, but Grace had pulled him back into the light, and together, with a little girl who believed in happy endings, they built something worth fighting for, a family, not the one they'd planned, but the one they needed. And in the quiet moments when the fire crackled and the stars stretched endlessly overhead, they knew they'd found something rare. Not perfection, not ease, but home, and that was everything.